We are about a week out from our trip over to California. We went to Disneyland and we had a great time. And what we're going to do is, I just wanted to do a little bit of a comparison between Disney World and Disneyland. I posted a few questions online, and I've got some areas where we're going to compare them. And each one has its advantages and disadvantages, but we're going to kind of assign points based on how they do. So to start off with, I'm going to talk about climate. And this one is an easy win for the land because the climate in California is awesome. In Florida, you've got heat, humidity, everything else, and in California it was just way nicer. Southern California, the weather's great. It's usually nice and sunny, but not really hot. When it does rain, it's usually not very much, and to be honest, the people think they're going to melt and they go hide, and it just means that you have the park nice and empty when it rains. So as far as climate and weather goes, I would say that Disneyland gets the easy win on that one. The next thing we were going to talk about is crowd size, and again, I'm going to give the point to Disneyland for this one. The crowds were a whole lot more manageable there. We are used to going to Florida like a lot of other people are, and it seems like there is no low season anymore in Florida. It's always really, really crowded. Our first day in Disneyland was Memorial Day last week, and honestly, even on Memorial Day, it seemed less crowded there than on an average day down in Florida at Disney World. So the crowds were a whole lot better. On top of that, the people making up the crowds seemed nicer. In Florida, I always feel like I'm going to get run over by a stroller or something, but I never really felt like that last week. So that was really nice. I did appreciate that. Next thing is going to be, let's see, so far we got 2 for Disneyland. Well, the next one's going to Disney World easily. It's on experiences, and there is a ton more stuff to do in Disney World, and if you've been there, you know that, mainly due to its size. Disney World is humongous. Disneyland is pretty small. Disneyland's about 100 acres with the new Star Wars area. Disney World is 25,000 acres, so just size alone, I mean, you could fit literally 250 Disneylands in Disney World, so there's just a ton more stuff to do. At Disneyland, you've got Disneyland Park, you've got California Adventure Park, and then you've got the downtown Disney area, and that's pretty much it. Disney World, they have everything. You've got 4 parks, you've got 2 water parks. They've got their own downtown Disney. They call it something else now. I can't remember now, but they have that. They have golf courses. I mean, you can go fishing there. You can rent boats. If you get bored at Disney World, it is your own fault because there is a ton to do. Now, there's lots of nice stuff at Disneyland, but I mean, it's just no comparison. Definitely as far as experiences go, there's just a ton more in Florida just because it is so much bigger. Next thing we're going to go to is food. This time the point again goes to Disney World, so I think that ties us up at 2 each on points now. The food at Disney World is by far better, I would say, mainly because they have Epcot, and I love Epcot. I love eating around the world and trying all the different stuff there. You know, your other parks have good stuff too, but I just love the food at Epcot. Disneyland, it was pretty limited. Again, size has a lot to do with it. It's much smaller. There's nowhere near as many restaurants. I mean, what they do have is decent, but there's just nothing like at Disney World. You just have far more options at Disney World, and like I said, you've got some really great things there. Epcot especially, right there, that puts them over on that one. So that definitely ties them up. Next thing, I'm going to go to rides, because, hey, you go to Disney World, you go to Disneyland, you got to go on some rides. And for this one, I really got to do a tie. I'm going to give a point to each, because, you know, as far as number goes, I would guess Disney World probably has more rides, just because it is bigger. but as far as quality goes, I think they really are equal. And one of the really cool things is they have some rides that are the same, like they have Pirates of the Caribbean at both parks, but they're different, and it's cool to experience how different that they are. Tower of Terror in Disney World, they have it in Disneyland, but it's Guardians of the Galaxy. It's been rethemed, so they have some rides that are really the same ride, but they have differences in them, and that makes them pretty cool. And then you've also got rides that are unique to each park. You've got Matterhorn there at Disneyland, which is a really cool roller coaster. It's kind of similar to the Everest one at Animal Kingdom in Florida, but again, they're just so different, and there's so many that are the same also, but have their own differences. I'm gonna give a point to each one on that. Now, since we're talking about rides, I'm going to talk about fast passes too, because we love having a fast pass. This is another one I'm really going to have to give a point to each. I'm just going to tie them again, mainly because the systems are pretty different. And, at Disney World, we're kind of used to doing our thing there, where ahead of time you can plan out your fast passes. I got thrown for a loop at Disneyland because it's totally different. You can't plan them ahead. You can't do them until the day you're there, and you can't do it until you are actually physically in the park. Even if you have the Max Pass option, which you can add on for $15 a day, and does include photos, so that's nice. If you have the Max Pass, you can do it from your phone on the app. If you don't have that, though, they actually still do the paper fast passes like they used to do at Disney World, I think. And you can go, and it's done differently, but it still works well. And so I think there's advantages and disadvantages to both. I really wish that Disney would take the good things from the fast pass system in Disneyland and the good things from the fast pass system in Disney World and combine them into one awesome system. I'm not holding my breath, but I think that would be really cool. But I'm going to give a point to each on this one. And so I think we're still tied up on that. That's the fast passes. Next thing I'm going to is the characters. This one is not a tie. Even though there's cool characters in Disney World, the land gets the point because their characters were awesome. They have characters that we're not used to seeing at Disney World, and they actually they're not stuck in one spot. They roam around, and it creates some really cool situations. Jesse and Emma rode the carousel with Mary Poppins and Bert and an entire marching band, and I don't hear of that happening at the World, so that was just awesome. And the characters interact with each other. We got to see the evil queen from Snow White come by and start harassing Jasmine about hanging out with the street rat, and that was hilarious. We got to see like Peter Pan talking to Aladdin and asking for advice on stealing things. So the interactions are just awesome. And so I'm by far, I got to give the point to Disneyland on this one. Okay, now to the last thing that we have. This one is for immersion, and I got to give credit to Ashley Knowlton for bringing this point up. She raises a good point. She talked about how after Walt Disney created Disneyland, one thing he really didn't like is how it is kind of in the middle of Anaheim there, and like right across the street there's McDonald's and everything else. And so when he built Disney World, he purposely bought huge amounts of land so that you can be fully immersed in it and really feel like you are in another world. And so Disney World, again, by far, mainly due to size, it is much more immersive. You can go to Disney World and you can spend a month there and never leave the property, assuming that you have enough money. But you can do anything you want there and not even see anything that's not on Disney property. Disneyland, like I said, it's really small. If you want to, you can ride the Haunted Mansion, and 10 minutes later you can be across the street eating a Big Mac, and then you can come back and go on another ride. So as far as immersion, I would give the point to Disney World there. But that being said, Disneyland does have some magic of its own, I think. And a lot of that is because it's really the only park that Walt Disney himself had a big hand in designing. He visited it. He went there all the time. He had his own apartment there above the firehouse. And like I already said with the characters, it really, even though it's small and even though it is right there in the middle of the city, I still felt like I was kind of immersed in the magic, so to speak. So I'm gonna give Disney World the point on this one, but I, Disneyland's pretty close. I don't know. I know Walt had his own ideas about this, but hey, I loved it. Okay. And so I think that brings us to a tie now, actually, on both parks. That's probably not what you wanted. You wanted me to say one is better than the other. Well, personally, I really did enjoy our trip to Disneyland, and I kind of feel like it's blasphemous to say, but I kind of like Disneyland a little bit better. That's my personal opinion. I know other people have gone to both, and they're like, oh, you're just going to think Disneyland's pathetic when you go, and I didn't think that at all. I really enjoyed it. I think it just really comes down to personal preference, because, on each one of these things, I gave the points to them, but you can make an argument for either one. I talked about the experiences. If you love having different things to do constantly, well then Disney World's great. If you don't want to have a huge 40 square mile complex that you have to explore, though, then it's not going to be so much for you. But, each park has its benefits. Jesse and I, we're going to do a live stream in a day or two and kind of talk a little bit more about that, just some general pros and cons to each. But I will say this, if you've only been to one, then, and if you loved it, you're going to love the other also. Like, we had only been to Disney World before, but we loved going to Disneyland. It was almost like going for the first time again. I mean, I told Jesse I felt like I was in Bizarro World or something walking around Disneyland, because it's like, this isn't where it should be, because I'm used to it the other way. But it was a new experience, and it really did make it feel new. And if you've only been to Disneyland, I mean, you're going to go to Disney World and you're going to have your mind blown just by how much there is there. So if you've only been to one, you cannot go wrong going to the other. You'll have a great experience. We did, and I'd encourage you to. So we will talk to y'all later. Like I said, we'll have a live stream coming up, and we'll give our opinions a little bit further on that. Take it easy.